Hi, and welcome to part 2 on the design a card game tutorial. Before we get started, I changed a couple of things from the end of part 1. I changed how the name was defined just because some of my units I did make the name just one string and got rid of any spaces. Sometimes just easier coding wise, sometimes doesn't make much difference, but I did it anyway, which when I had to redefine the name. Also, I added a couple of events, which might use later on in this tutorial, and I've reloaded all these images using lower quality files, just in case you do want to download it yourself, and get the file size down for you. Okay, let's get started. At the end of part 1, we had got this layout done, had loads of mess with margin containers, and we now got it so we can load up any card fairly well I say, to give us our unit setup. What we're going to do today is set up a player hand, so you can have a certain amount of cards, and also set up like a play space where we can then draw those cards into. First, I'm going to start with a player hand. Just looking through it, all it is, I've got a constant of card lists, and then I've just got 5 cards there. But for now, when I draw cards, I'm going to draw it from these list of 5 possible. We won't use this card base much anymore at all, and we are now going to start a new scene, and I'm going to call that my play space. Basically, anywhere I draw cards, that's going to go into there. Let's save that. We'll keep it in our root directory. We're going to use it quite a lot. So always going to add a child node. I'm going to add a blank node, and I'm going to call this cards. So basically, anytime I want to create cards, they'll be created as children of this node here, just so they're separate and easy to find. While I'm here, I might as well add a sprite, and I'm going to have a quick background. No reason to do this now, it's just I get bored of having this horrible grey space the entire time. Let's have a nice, bright, terrible background. Just some sort of brighten the space a little bit. That'll do, that'll do. Okay, into our play space, let's attach some script and let's get started. So, first thing I want to do, I've got a couple of things I want to load. And it is going to be my card base scene from part 1 and the player hand that I just wrote over here. So let's do that. We load both as constants. I want a constant card base. And I want to preload. You always want to preload just so it can save rendering times if you're not loading the same thing loads and loads of times. And so card base is here. So it's in my directory, then in the cards folder, and it is called card base with a capital B. Yep. .tscn for scene. I want to do then the exact same thing for my player hand. And that's in the same directory, and it's called player hand with an underscore between the two. Wrong extension there, that should be .dd. So let's see what we can do with this. So far we're loading these cards. Let's see if we can actually get something that's vaguely what we actually want. So I'm going to jump straight into this delta function. Actually not, I'm going to write an input event. So I'm going to have an input function. I'm just going to say if we click the left mouse button, we then want to create a card. So to this, you need to go project settings, input map, and add at the bottom left click, which is my left button. So whenever I release the left mouse button or have let go of it, I'm going to spawn a card. So let's see how we're going to do that. First things first, I'm going to add a var, and that is going to be new card, and I want to instance my card base. It's going to be card base. So instant just basically means make a copy of it, but all the copies can be slightly different. Next, let's decide what card we want. So just to start off with, I want to pick its card name. So remember, if we go back to our card base, that card name basically defined everything. It defined where we loaded it, what we loaded it, and what information it had. So here, we'll just load a footman, because there are quite a lot of them. And let's give it a position. Oh no. Keep doing this. Probably on the downside of me using a margin container for my base is that position is actually stored as rect position. So make sure you're aware of that. And I'm going to say I just want it to spawn anywhere right now. I'm just going to say wherever the mouse is, it can spawn right there. And last thing, like I said, I want to add it as a child of the cards node. Main reasons are you want to always know where they are, because you can do something to all my cards. And also, if I want to know how many cards are in play, I can just count how many children I've got of this node here. So it really does help out to separate the key aspects of your game in separate nodes. Add child. And the child is new card. Okay, let's see if that worked. So let's run this. And if I left click, yep, that is spawning a footman. So there's some old text spawning here. I suppose I can comment that now. I think that's my card base somewhere. Yeah, print card info. We'll just comment that. We might use it later on. First thing I noticed was those units were massive. Okay, so over here, I'm going to create a new card size. And we'll say right now, we will just have them as half the current size. So 125, 175. And that does mean in here, I want to scale them according to that. Rectangular scale. Did this load last time. We want to times it by the size we want it to be, and we want to divide it by the size it currently is. I think that is rect size. Yeah. Okay, so if you run that, that has fixed the size problems. We've got a slight offset issue, but I'll fix that later on. So we can now spawn basic cards. Next thing really handy to do is if we can spawn cards from my player hand, from my list of 5 cards. So to do that, when I create a card here, I want it to be based upon just a random card from this list here. So we can do that straight away, fairly easily. Okay, we're going to create a var, which tells me what card selected I have. Do that blank for now. And I'm also going to create a new var, which is going to be my deck size. This I can actually call now. That will just be, sorry, if I go player hand.card list, that will give me this list here, these 5 things. And I want the size of that. So if I do player hand.card list.size, that will give me how big my deck is, how many cards are in it. In fact, because this must run after I've loaded it, this has to be an already var. We can start to make progress now. I'm going to call card selected down here, and I just want a random number going up to my deck size. So for random numbers, we do that just using the rand I for integer or whole number, and we want that to be in the range of my deck size. So now let's collect a random number anywhere from, I think it'll be from 0 to 4. So everything likes to start at 0 in this. And from there we get its card name. We want to go to our player hand. .card list again. And we want to call the number that we just selected. So now if I run this, we should be able to get a random card from my section of 5, which we do. However, what's going wrong here is I'm not erasing my cards after I call them. So let's work that out now. I want to erase a card. I want to call that, I think after I add the child to it. I'm going to say go to my player hand and my card list, and I want to erase that card. And I want to erase this card name here. I'm going to copy this bit of text in here. And that should work now. I should now only be able to call 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a crash on the 5th card, which makes sense because I haven't updated my deck size. So what happened here is it tried to call like the 4th or 5th card if you count 0 as a card, but there's of course only 1 card left. So I also need to add on deck size to capitals. I want this to go down by 1 after each time I call it. Okay, and that's going to be the first part to it. So right now, we can call 5 cards exactly. Upon calling the 6th, we get a division by 0 error. Okay, now let's move on. I think it would be a bit nicer if we now add a deck. Add a child node, node 2D. I'm going to call that my deck. In there on another child, and I'm going to use a texture button. So texture buttons are really good for buttons. But you can also do this fairly nicely. Advantage of texture buttons, if I go to textures, whether your texture is just normal, just lying around there, is it pressures, hovering, you can assign different textures to it. So if we go into our assets, I think it's card borders. Yeah, I've got a back texture. For now, I'm going to just copy all of those into normal, pressed, and hover. For disabled, I'm going to throw in gold border for now. So basically, when there's no cards left, I wanted to show this gold border instead to make it really clear that I'm out of cards. Okay, I'm going to call this texture button deck draw for now, just as vaguely obvious what's going on with this. I'm going to attach a bit of script, and this isn't going to do much. First thing I do want it to do, I want it to update its size. So what'll be handy is if I go to this script, if everything's running from the same size. To this, we have this code and we have used it absolutely tons so far. My rescaling code is here. Okay, let's copy that across and let's throw that in the ready function. And we're going to say that the scale, I think it's just scaling this time rather than rect scale. No, it's rect scale still. Rect scale times equals. I want it to be card size, but that is 2 nodes higher. So we just say get node, go 1 directory up, 2 directories up, and that needs to be in quotes. 2 directories up, and call the card size. And I want to divide it by my rect size, I think. Yeah. So if I run that, this should now scale across. I'm also going to move this slightly. So let's grab them both. I want to stick it over here for now. So I run that. That should now be the right size. Yep, lovely. And I'm going to add a bit of code in here. That's going to draw the cards for me instead. So to do this, we can use a function and we're going to use a GUI input. That's the one. And we're going to say, just before, if we just released the left mouse button, is action just released, left click. First things first, we can only do this if the deck size is greater than 0. Also, deck size isn't called yet. Just to make it really quick there, and it counts out at 0, so that'll break it. So the other extreme, I want to say my initial deck size is infinitely big. What we're then going to do, if we go back to play space, we had all this text if I left clicked. I'm going to get rid of that now. Indent it left once, and I'm going to call this a function, and I'm going to call it the function draw card. And then from deck draw, so from here I want to call that function. So get node, quotation marks, I want to go up 2 nodes again, and I want to call that function draw card. What's called just called draw card? Yeah, draw card. Okay, and we don't need passing variables to that. However, I need to update the deck size here. So if I go back to my player space, I'm going to tell it to return whatever the deck size currently is. Okay, that means in deck draw, it'll now update it so we can now use the if deck size is greater than 0 part. We can say that deck size equals that. Lastly, I need an extra if loop. This has to go after this code. I can't be like an else or anything. So I don't want an additional check to check if the deck size is 0. I want to know that straight away rather than running another loop of the if loop. And if the deck size is 0, I then want to say disabled is true. That means it will then make the card image go blank and all this bit of code will no longer be able to run. So let's see if that's working for us. Running our play space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's gone black. Okay, and I can't click it anymore. So we're getting there. Aside the fact of absolutely awful positioning, actually started to look quite nice. So let's sort out the positions now. And that is going to be all handled here, what I call rectangular position. What I said in part 1, it's really nice if we have a nice arc of cards. If we look at what they did in Slay the Spire, you can kind of sort of see what I think they've done is they kind of sort of made an oval shape here, and then they've sort of plotted those cards alongside that oval. So I show you that. You're going to see this actually matches really nicely. This oval sort of fits perfect on the cards. And also notice they've basically got a minimum and a maximum, I'll say, angle that they can go along in order to do these cards. So let's try and do the same kind of thing now. First thing we have to know is how to nicely describe points along an oval. I will link now to a video on my other channel, which goes through the basics of that. That's some pretty hairy maths and uses stuff called polar coordinates. I'll try and abridge it really quickly now. In polar coordinates, everything's defined as a radius and an angle rather than an x and a y coordinate. If we were doing a circle for the x coordinate, you would have the radius times by the cos of the angle, and the y coordinate, you would have the radius times by sine of the angle. Okay, that will give us a circle. Again, like I said, we want an oval. The difference with this, for an oval, you basically have two radiuses. You have radius 1 and radius 2. Otherwise, it'll be the exact same thing. Radius 1 will be the radius along your x-axis, and radius 2 will be this radius here. Okay, both things we're going to play around with until we start to get it looking fairly nice. Let's code some of that stuff first. We're going to need to code 3 things. First things first, I want a center. I want to know where all these, or basically the center of my oval is. I want to know where this point here is. Looking at it, it's about halfway along the x-axis, and I say about an extra 30% down. So we're going to code that in now. Another onReady var. I'm going to call this center card oval. So center cards my ovals. I want to call the whole viewport. So again, if I change resolution, nothing's going to break. From that, I want the size of it. And I want to change the sliding. I times it by a vector 2. I said I want it halfway. So 0.5 on the x coordinate. And I want to add an extra 30%. So times it by 1.3 on my y coordinate. So that'll be a point that's basically off my screen. I then want a couple of radiuses. I'm going to have a horizontal radius. And I'm going to have a vertical radius. Both of these will come from the get viewpoint stuff. For the horizontal radius, I just want the x coordinates. And for the vertical radius, I just want the y coordinate. Let's try and get some rough numbers for these. If I swing back around, I'll say my radius for the x coordinates looks to be just under half of the whole way across. And it's actually the same for the Y's, maybe a bit less than half again. So let's throw some numbers to that. We can always change these. I'm going to say I want this to be 45%. And I want this to be 40%. And I'm also going to have a starting angle. I want my starting angle to be 90 degrees. For Godot, whenever it does trigonometry, it always assumes in radians. Let's convert from degrees to radians. And let's have that as 90 degrees. So that'll be pi by 2 in Godot, but so going here. When it gets to this position, we're going to change that now. So let's comment that for now. Let's add another vector position. Okay, we want to start from our center. I now want to add on what's going to basically be the angle vector using these two radiuses. So in fact, let's try and be fairly clever. We'll call that a new variable. Let's just go for oval angle vector. That's going to be a vector 2. Now let's stop just a blank one up here. Okay, and let's define that now. So oval angle vector, that is a vector 2. That is going to be the radius times by the horizontal radius, sorry, times by cos of the angle. My angle is angle, that's quite easy. And then for my y coordinates, I want the vertical radius times by sine of the angle. Okay, happy with that? Yep. I want to add this on to my new position. So it starts in the center, add the vector, and then the last thing we need to do, we need to offset it based on this card size here. So this new card has a size. When it wants to draw it, it's going to want to draw it from the top left. So if I minus this vector here, that should then help us offset that method of drawing. Let's see if that's working. Nope, my cards are nowhere to be seen, but they have been drawn. So let's see what's going wrong. Ah yes, the old chestnut. So in Godot and all coding languages, when you make Y bigger, you're going further down the screen. I wanted to go further up the screen here, so I needed a minus here. And hopefully that will fix it. Yeah, there's our card. Looking about right, I'm happy with him there. I might stretch him up. I might shift him up actually. So rather than a 1.3 here, let's have a 1.25. So just be slightly higher. Yeah, that's pretty perfect for now. The problem is now is if I keep clicking that, all the cards go in the exact same position. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to add a bit of code that says once we've got an angle, I'll do that here. Let's just add on the angle. So we'll add on 0.2 radians and we'll just see how that fits. Yeah, that's looking fairly nice. I'm going to make that a bit bigger actually, and we'll tweak it so it starts on this side, so we get like a nice arc of cards. So rather than 0.2, let's try 0.3, and I'm going to minus 2 lots of that, so minus 0.6, and we'll see how that's looking. Okay, probably gone a bit too far away now. Okay, that'll do. We'll assume that's absolutely fine. I just want to do one more thing today. If we go back to Slay the Spire, we can see the cards angle slightly based on which side we're on. They don't angle much. We're going to quickly add that in just so it looks a bit nicer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little rotation here. So if I go to my card base, let's look what I need to call it. That is going to be rotation, or rect rotation, of course. This is one of the reasons why I have to pivot our offset, so any rotation now goes about this center here, rather than the top left center. You can see it's rotating about the center, which is what we want. Going to my play space code. New card, dot rect rotation. Let's see how that looks if that just equals angle. Horrendous, and that's because I have got my angle being in radians and the rotation wants to be in degrees. So let's just do a quick conversion, radians to degrees. Oh dear. That just needs to be offset by 90 degrees, so that should be working. There we go, that's kind of working. However, that's far too severe, that's far too much tilt. Okay, so that angle's far too much. So let's just divide the whole thing by 4. And that should make it a lot less severe. Should look a bit better. There we go. Happy with that. We've got a slight tilt, but nothing too severe. We will leave it there for this part. In part 3, we will add it so they automatically take their space. Especially if you've got 1 card, it'll always go in the center. 2 cards will go side by side. And then up to 5 cards go in this array here. And we'll also have basic transitions, so they sort of move from the deck to their position. Okay, thanks for listening.